The canyon walls rose like cathedral spires around Ezra Blackwood as he guided his supply wagon through Devil's Pass that October morning in 1881. 48 years old, weathered by war and whiskey, carrying medical supplies to Fort Huachuca through Apache country, where a $500 bounty hung over every native woman's head. That's when he saw her, slumped against a dead horse, blood seeping through buckskin that clung to curves no warrior should possess. Raven hair spilled across bronze shoulders, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Beautiful. Deadly. Apache. Every instinct screamed right away. In Arizona territory, helping an Apache meant a rope around your neck or a bullet in your back. The newspapers called them savages. The army called them targets. But something in her stillness reminded him of his own daughter Emma, cold in the ground these 3 years past. Ezra's hand trembled on his rifle. One choice would damn him. The other would damn his soul. What does a broken man do when mercy might mean his life? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from fellow Western fans around the world. She fights. That's what Nalnish meant in Apache. 22 years old, trained by her father Mangus to shoot straighter than most men, track quieter than mountain cats, and kill without hesitation when cornered. But lying there with a cavalry bullet in her shoulder, she looked fragile as autumn leaves. Ezra dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on scattered stones. Each step closer was another nail in his coffin. The smart play was to take her weapons, claim the bounty, buy enough whiskey to forget those dark eyes that reminded him too much of Emma's. Instead, he found himself kneeling beside her, fingers checking the pulse at her throat. Steady, strong. Her skin burned with fever, but she was alive. Easy now, he whispered, reaching for the morphine in his medical kit. Her eyes snapped open, black as midnight, sharp as obsidian blades. In one fluid motion, her hand found the knife at her hip, steel kissing his throat before he could blink. Pindalikoyi, she hissed, white-eyes devil, but her voice was weak, her grip unsteady. Blood loss was winning the battle. Her pride refused to surrender. I'm not here to hurt you, Ezra said in broken Apache, hands raised. You're bleeding bad. Let me help. She studied his face with the intensity of a hunter reading tracks, looking for lies, for the cruelty she'd learned to expect from men like him. What she found instead was something unexpected, genuine concern mixed with grief so deep it had carved lines around his eyes. The knife wavered. Why? The English word came out rough, accented, but clear. Because you remind me of my daughter. Because I've got nothing left to lose. Because maybe saving one life can balance the scales of all the ones I've failed. Because it's the right thing to do. Minutes passed, like hours. Cavalry patrols could appear at any moment. The longer he stayed, the deeper he sank into treason against his own kind. Finally, Nalnish let the blade drop. Ezra worked quickly, his army training taking over. Morphine for the pain. Torn strips from his own shirt to bind the wound. Her buckskin dress had been cut away from the shoulder, revealing smooth, bronze skin marred by purple bruising. She was beautiful in the way desert storms were beautiful, dangerous and untamed. You need a doctor, he said, tying off the bandage. No. Her voice carried steel despite the weakness. Take me to my father. You know Mangus? Every white man in the territory knew that name. Mangus the war chief, leader of the last Free Apache band, the ghost who'd been dancing just beyond the army's grasp for 2 years. The man whose daughter Ezra was now patching up like she was his own kin. That's 40 miles through country, crawling with soldiers looking for your scalp. Then we better ride hard. She struggled to sit up, jaw clenched against the pain. Help me, or I tell them you tried to take liberties with an Apache woman. See how that plays in Tombstone. The threat hung between them like smoke. She was right. In a territory where Apache raids had left families slaughtered and homesteads burned, the mere suggestion would see him hanged from the nearest tree. But as he looked into those fierce eyes, Ezra realized something had shifted inside him. For the first time since Sarah and Emma died, he felt a purpose beyond the bottom of a whiskey bottle. "There's a storm coming," he said, studying the darkening sky. "We'll travel at night, hole up during the day. You do exactly what I say when I say it. I'm not some soft white woman who needs protecting. No, you're an Apache warrior with a bullet hole in her shoulder, traveling with the enemy through the most dangerous country in America. So maybe listen to the enemy who's trying to keep you alive." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe even respect. As thunder rumbled overhead and the first drops of rain began to fall, Ezra helped Nalnish into his wagon. She settled among the medical supplies and ammunition, her presence transforming his simple freight run into something far more dangerous. "What's your name? White Eyes?" she asked as he climbed onto the driver's seat. "Ezra Blackwood. Sergeant, late of the Army of the Potomac. Father to a little girl who would have been about 11 now. Widower. Drunk. Fool." "Ezra," she repeated, the name strange on her tongue. "I am Nalnish, daughter of Mengus, warrior of the Chiricahua, and I do not trust you." "Good," he said, snapping the reins. "Trust will get you killed out here." As the wagon rolled deeper into Apache country, neither of them knew they were about to embark on a journey that would test every belief they held about enemies, honor, and the price of mercy. The rain fell harder, washing away their tracks, but not the danger that followed, like a shadow. The first cavalry patrol found their tracks at dawn. Ezra and Nalnish had been traveling 12 hours, the wagon wheels grinding through mud and stone, while she drifted in and out of fevered sleep. When she was conscious, she watched him with those dark eyes, cataloging his every movement like she was memorizing the face of her killer. 20 riders, Ezra whispered, studying the dust cloud rising in the distance. Maybe a mile back. Nalnish struggled to sit up among the medical supplies, her face pale beneath bronze skin. The morphine was wearing off, and pain drew tight lines around her eyes, but she gripped her rifle with steady hands. "They track us." "Not yet. Rain washed out most of our sign." He guided the wagon off the main trail toward a cluster of red rocks that rose from the desert like broken teeth. "But they'll find us if we stay in the open." They abandoned the wagon in a narrow canyon, taking only water, ammunition, and the medicines Nalnish needed. Ezra helped her onto his horse, her body pressing against his back as they rode deeper into the maze of stone passages. She was burning with fever, her breath coming in short gasps against his shoulder. Twice she nearly slipped from the saddle, and twice he caught her, his hands lingering longer than necessary on the curve of her waist. "Tell me about your daughter," she said during one of her clearer moments, voice barely above a whisper. The request caught him off guard. "Why?" "White men who talk about their children. They don't usually hurt women." Emma, golden-haired like her mother, with Sarah's laugh and his stubborn streak. Dead at 8 from the same cholera that took his wife, buried in graves he visited, until the whiskey made him forget which direction the cemetery lay. "She liked stories," he said finally. "Wild tales about knights and dragons and princesses who saved themselves. Apache children love stories too, about coyote and crow, and women warriors who rode with the wind." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that grief wore the same face, regardless of skin color. When the fever took her again that night, she spoke in Apache, calling for her mother. Her body shook against his as he held her in the shelter of an overhang, rainwater running in silver streams down the rock face. "Shema," she whispered. "Mother." Ezra found himself smoothing her hair back from her fevered brow, humming the same lullaby he'd sung to Emma during thunderstorms. Nalnish's breathing gradually steadied, and for the first time since his family died, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. The second patrol nearly caught them at sunrise. Blue-coated soldiers picked their way through the canyon below, while Ezra and Nalnish pressed themselves against a limestone ledge 40 feet above. She was conscious again, alert, her warrior instincts taking over despite the wound. Her hand found his, squeezing tight when a sergeant called out, "Fresh horse tracks here." Can't be more than a few hours old. They waited 2 hours after the soldiers passed before moving again. By then, Nalnish's fever had broken, leaving her weak but clear-eyed. "Why are you doing this?" she asked as they shared his last canteen of water. The question he'd been avoiding since Devil's Pass. Because she reminded him of Emma? Because he was tired of being empty inside? Because mercy was the only thing that separated men from beasts? Maybe I'm tired of being on the wrong side of things. And which side is that? The side that puts bounties on women's heads. The side that calls you savages while we steal your land and kill your children. Her laugh was bitter. Pretty words from a man who used to wear the blue coat. "I wore it to preserve the Union. Didn't sign up to slaughter families. But you did it anyway." The accusation hit home because it was true. He'd followed orders, even the ones that kept him awake at night. The burned villages, the scattered bodies, the children's eyes that still haunted his dreams. "Yes," he said simply, "and I'll carry that weight till the day I die." She studied him for a long moment. "My mother used to say the worst white eyes were the ones who felt guilty about their evil. Said it made them twice as dangerous." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. Until the bluecoats killed her." The words hung between them like a challenge. Here was the moment when everything could collapse, when the daughter of a murdered Apache woman realized she was trusting her life to one of the enemy. Instead, Nalnish reached out and touched the scar on his left hand, a souvenir from Antietam. "This is where you learn to hate war," she said. It wasn't a question. "Among other places." "Good. Men who love war make poor allies." Allies. The word carried weight he wasn't sure he could bear. As they prepared to move deeper into Apache territory, toward a confrontation with Mangus that could end with Ezra's scalp decorating a war lance, he wondered if mercy was worth dying for. Looking at Nalnish, proud, fierce, trusting him despite every reason not to, he thought maybe it was. The Apache camp appeared like a mirage among the red cliffs. 7 wickiups scattered around a hidden spring, smoke rising thin and careful to avoid detection. 11 souls, all that remained of Mangus's once mighty band. "Hagoni," Nalnish called out softly as they approached. "Welcome." But there wasn't a welcome in the warriors who emerged from the shadows, rifles trained on Ezra's chest. Hard men worn lean by war and hunger, eyes like winter stones. At their head stood Mangus himself, 52 years old, silver threading through black hair, bearing the quiet authority of a chief who'd watched his world burn. "Shichani," Nalnish said, sliding from the horse into her father's arms. "My father." Mangus held his daughter close, his gaze never leaving Ezra's face. When he spoke, his English was precise, educated, the voice of a man who'd once tried to make peace before learning it was impossible. You bring a white eyes to our fire, daughter. Explain this. He saved my life, tended my wounds, brought me home when he could have claimed the bounty. And what does this white eyes want in return? The question cut straight to the heart of it. What did he want? Absolution? A chance to balance the scales? Or was he just a lonely drunk looking for meaning in the bottom of an empty bottle? Nothing, Ezra said. Your daughter was hurt. I helped. That's all. One of the younger warriors, barely 20 with scars mapping his arms like a battle history, spat in the dirt. Lies. All white eyes lie. Naylan, Mangus said sharply. Be quiet. He studied Ezra with the intensity of a hunter reading tracks. You know who I am. White Eyes. Mangus. War Chief of the Chiricahua. The man they say is a ghost. And you know the army has put a price on my head? $5,000. Dead or alive. I know. Yet you sit in my camp, armed, outnumbered, with no guarantee you will leave alive. Ezra met his stare steadily. Seemed like the right thing to do. Mangus was quiet for a long moment. Around the fire, the other Apache watched with the stillness of predators deciding whether to strike. An old woman, one of only two left, muttered something in Apache that made several warriors nod grimly. Shijaadi says you smell of whiskey and death, Mangus translated. She says white eyes who help Apache do it for gold or guilt, and both make poor allies. She's probably right about the guilt, Ezra admitted. But I'm here anyway. Why? The simple question that had no simple answer. Because your daughter has your eyes and her mother's courage. Because I couldn't save my own child, but maybe I can help save you. Because mercy is the only thing left that makes me feel human. Because sometimes a man gets tired of being on the wrong side of history. Nalanish moved to stand beside her father, her hand resting on his arm. He speaks truth, Shitaya. I watched him for 2 days. He had chances to betray me, to claim the bounty, to leave me for dead. Instead, he shared his water, his medicine, his protection. Protection? The young warrior, Nalan, laughed harshly. What protection can one white eyes offer? That's when Ezra told them about the cavalry patrols, the changing patterns he'd observed in his supply runs, the weaknesses in Fort Huachuca's defenses. Information that could mean the difference between escape and annihilation. The camp fell silent as he spoke. These weren't the random observations of a drunk freight hauler. This was military intelligence from a man who understood how the army thought. You offer this knowledge freely? Mangus asked. I offer it because you're fighting for your families, your land, your way of life. I understand that fight. And when the army discovers your betrayal? Ezra thought of his empty cabin, his meaningless existence hauling supplies between forts. I got nothing left to betray. Mangus studied him for another long moment, then spoke rapidly in Apache to the other warriors. Arguments broke out, voices rising and falling like desert wind. Nalanish joined the debate, her words quick and passionate. Finally, Mangus raised his hand for silence. We are 19 days from the Mexican border, he said. 19 days through country crawling with soldiers who shoot Apache on sight. The women and children are weak, the warriors few. We need every advantage to survive. He stepped closer to Ezra, close enough that their eyes locked. Help us reach Mexico, and I will call you brother. Betray us, and I will feed your heart to the coyotes while you watch. Fair terms. As night fell over the hidden camp, Ezra found himself accepted into the desperate family of the last free Apache. Around the fire, children who should have been playing listened to war plans instead. Mothers who should have been tending gardens counted bullets and rationed water. Tomorrow they would begin the most dangerous 19 days of their lives. Tonight, for the first time since Emma died, Ezra Blackwood had a reason to see sunrise. The cavalry patrol was waiting in Dead Horse Canyon, exactly where Ezra said they wouldn't be. 20 soldiers in perfect position, rifles glinting in the dawn light. A trap that would slaughter every Apache in Mangus's band if they rode into it blind. Ezra crouched behind a boulder, watching the ambush unfold below. He could slip away, disappear into the desert, let the Apache walk into death, while he rode toward Mexico and freedom. Instead, he thought of Emma's laugh, of Nalnish's trust, of the children sleeping back in camp. The bullet took him high in the chest as he broke from cover, shouting a warning in Apache that echoed off the canyon walls. He stumbled, fell, crawled behind a fallen tree as rifle fire erupted around him. Behind him he heard Mangus's war cry, the thunder of hooves, as the Apache scattered to safety. The trap had failed. They would live to see Mexico. But Ezra Blackwood was dying in the dust of Arizona territory, alone, except for the memory of his daughter's smile and the weight of his final choice. "Hazu," Nalnish whispered as she found him, her hands gentle on his face. "Peace. You saved us all." "Did I save Emma too?" he asked, the words barely audible. "Yes," she lied with perfect kindness. "She's proud of you." They buried him at sunset according to Apache custom, his rifle beside him, his spirit free to ride the wind. Mangus spoke the words for fallen warriors, while Nalnish placed desert flowers on the grave of the White Eyes who chose honor over safety. 20 years later, on the San Carlos Reservation, an old Apache woman would tell her grandchildren about the freight hauler who learned that mercy knows no color, that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest warriors are those who save others instead of themselves. In the end, Ezra Blackwood found his daughter in every life he helped preserve, his Emma's laughter echoing in the voices of Apache children who grew up free because one broken man chose love over hate. If this story moved you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the untamed frontier, where honor was earned one choice at a time.